What's up, freediver fans? My name is Christian Daehler. I'm a PFI freedive instructor in Palm Beach, Florida, and today we're going to talk about freediving safety as we break down the first blackout I ever recovered. This particular blackout occurred when I was a very new diver. I didn't have a full sense of what freedive safety looks like, and I had a lot of diving practices that were dangerous, even though at the time I didn't realize just how dangerous they were. And as a result of both of those things, this blackout was not handled very well. I made a lot of mistakes. It was a very long and severe blackout, and we are lucky that it ended out as positively as it did. However, I thought we would make a video about it, break down all the mistakes that I made, so hopefully we can learn from those and not make the same mistakes in the future. So let's jump right into it. So on this particular dive, we had found a spring in North Florida that had a very deep underwater cavern. And finally, on this particular dive, one of my buddies actually does manage to reach the back wall, but on the way back out, he blacks out while he's still inside. And I'll be honest, it took me a while to actually process what was going on. At this point in time, I had never seen a blackout before. So when I do finally reach my buddy, I grab him by the face, I cover his mouth, I pinch his nose, and I start swimming us straight up towards the surface. The problem was we were inside the cavern still. So instead of swimming to the surface, I end up bashing both his head and my head against the ceiling. And that causes me to freak out and panic even more. So when I do finally get us out of the cave and we're at the surface, the only thing I can think to do at this moment in time is to, while I'm still holding my dive buddy by his head, is to shake him back and forth and yell, "Breathe!" And I keep doing this over and over and over again with no benefit. He's still blacked out. And finally, I end up finding myself in shallow water where I can stand. And when I get to a point where I can actually stand, I actually let go of my dive buddy's head and lay him down in my arms, almost like I'm cradling a baby. And a couple of seconds after I did that, he takes a couple of breaths, opens his eyes, and wakes up. And luckily, he was totally fine after all of this went down. It was very scary for us. It was about 55 seconds from blackout to him actually waking up. The only thing that went right was I protected my dive buddy's airway. By doing this, I prevented water from entering his mouth or his nose, and I eliminated the risk for water entering his lungs, which is a very big thing we have to think about when we're freediving. Arguably, protecting the airway is the most important thing we could ever do when we are rescuing a LMC or a blackout. However, everything else that we're supposed to do after that, I totally messed up. In fact, I didn't do any of it. In your average level 1 course, you're going to learn, once you get your dive buddy to the surface, you lay them on their back, you do some sort of arm link or do-si-do to lay them out and continue to protect their airway, and then open up their airway as well to make it easier for them to breathe. From there, we'll remove their mask and we'll do a series of blows across their eyes, taps on their cheeks, and encouraging them to breathe, often called blow tap talk. All of this stuff I completely forgot to do. So when we break down all the mistakes I made, one of the biggest things we can take away is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. In my panic state, even though I knew how to lay my dive buddy on his back, remove his mask, and perform blow tap talk, I completely forgot about it. I was too panicked to think about anything else other than shaking his head back and forth and yelling at him to breathe. So in that moment, had I taken a moment and just taken a breath, gathered myself, and gone through a mental checklist. Okay, I just got my dive buddy to the surface. What do I need to do next? Even though that seems like a slow, methodical way to go about things, I actually would have recovered my dive buddy a lot faster had I done it that way. But instead, I kept my wet hands on my dive buddy's face. And if you understand the way that blow tap talk works, is you are stimulating your dive buddy's face, blowing across their eyes, tapping on their face, telling them to talk, essentially using all the nerve endings on their face to show the unconscious brain that they are now in the air where it's safe to breathe, so that the blacked out diver can actually wake themselves up once they feel like they're in a safe environment to do so. But rather than doing that, what I did was actually hurtful to the recovery process, because I had wet hands that were all over my dive buddy's face. So it didn't matter how hard I shook him, it didn't matter how loud I yelled at him to breathe, my wet hands on his face were actively telling his unconscious brain that he was still underwater and it was not safe to breathe. Another big thing we can do to take away from this is just to understand that these blackouts can and do happen. Prior to this blackout ever happening, I thought I wasn't good enough at freediving to even have to worry about this stuff. And as a result, I didn't put any thought into preparing for something like this to happen. I kind of just checked the boxes that my level 1 instructor told me with the golden rules of freediving, and that's pretty much where I left it. Since then, now we actually have serious conversations with our dive buddies about how we would respond to certain blackouts in certain circumstances, and we continually practice our rescue techniques. So we're at the point now where we can do those rescue techniques with our eyes closed. So if you and your dive buddies are not really taking freedive safety seriously, I encourage y'all to consider it. Talk about how you might go about certain issues. Practice those techniques on conscious divers who are pretending to be unconscious. Run through all of those things. The last thing we should talk about is the fact that freediving in caves is not very smart. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that one of the things that caused this to be as severe of a blackout as it was the fact that myself and my dive buddies were very new divers who did a lot of dangerous things without really realizing how dangerous those things were. And when we get into a cave or a cavern environment, it makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to continue to deliver an adequate level of freediving safety. And in the particular case of my buddy who blacked out in the cave, had he blacked out 5 seconds prior to when he actually did, I would not have been able to see it, even though I was at the entrance of the cave looking in. And had I not seen it, number one, I might not have known anything was wrong in the first place. And by the time we did realize something was wrong, who knows if we would have ever been able to find our buddy. So that's just one last thing to think about. But hopefully, after breaking this blackout down, we can learn from the mistakes that I made early on in my freediving career and avoid making those same mistakes ourselves.